Hi kittens. I'd just like to talk about a few more thoughts I've had about spirituality and the spiritual pathway because since I first started with this topic and had like my brief sojourn into ideas about that, I've actually started writing down a few things and it's actually snowballed into quite a big theme. So, and since this channel is all about the spiritual journey and the journey of spiritual development, my spiritual development, people's spiritual development in general, paganism and such, I thought it might be quite nice to explore some of my other thoughts on it. And before I begin, though, I would like to say for anybody who's waiting for me to do something tarot orientated, it is on its way. I don't know if it will be tonight or tomorrow because I'm pretty shattered tonight and I've been doing a lot of studying. But I do have a few themes that I really want to concentrate on with tea and tarot, so there will be a few tea and tarot episodes coming. And I thought I might put this out there in case it's of interest to anybody. I was just wondering if anybody would have any interest in seeing like a free beginner's tarot course from me on YouTube in various episodes. Because I've noticed quite a few people saying that they find my videos on tarot ethics and designing tarot spreads to be very interesting, but that they're nowhere near at that stage themselves yet. They're still very much only just picking up the deck or only just considering picking up a deck. So I was wondering if maybe I've kind of begun a little bit too far into it. I mean, it was never my intention to do a beginner's course, but if there's an interest in it, then I certainly will. I will begin with kind of like the history and the idea of tarot, where it came from, go through the majors, break them down into the fool's journey, go through the minors, the four suits, etc., their meanings, and then go on to kind of other more advanced topics if you want. So it's kind of like a basic, you could literally start with a deck and not know your ass from your elbow and end up with some kind of foundation knowledge. If anyone's interested in me doing that, then I will certainly put time aside to make videos of that nature. It's not a problem for me. As I've always said, I could talk the hind legs off a donkey when it comes to tarot, so I have no problem with doing that. So yeah, that's an idea that I thought maybe we could get into together, and I have a lot of exercises that are very useful for people that are just starting on the road with tarot, and I can certainly share those exercises with you. I can share that knowledge with you. I have no problem doing that at all. So just hit me up if you think that's something you might like to do or you might like to see from me, or if there are any particular tarot topics that are kind of more 101, as they say, and you would like them to be covered, then please do let me know and I will do my best to cover them as adequately as I possibly can. So what I was thinking about recently with regard to spirituality, and it kind of does flow on from what I was saying in my last video, I was thinking about ways in which you can challenge the ideas that you have and challenge your routine when it comes to the spiritual path and step out of it a little bit. And I was thinking about ways that it's possible to do that. And, I was talking in my last video about comfort zones, and I recently did a tarot reading for a friend of mine, and the theme of comfort zones came up quite a lot. I'm not sure if I mentioned this in my last video, but a comfort zone is not just an emotional place to drop anchor and kind of remain inside, even though you may know that it's you do that because you're used to it or you do that because you're scared, kind of thing. A comfort zone is also a physical routine you have in everyday life. Like for me, for example, when I come home from a difficult day, the first thing that I want to do is get out of the clothes I was wearing for the day, get into something comfortable with an elasticated waist or whatever, and then I want to sit on the bed with a nice cup of tea, and I just kind of want to do mundane stuff online. I don't necessarily want to study anything, I don't necessarily want to find out anything new per se. I don't want to shake anything up. I just want to sit there and de-stress my brain by taking on sort of quite mundane, amusing information that's not too challenging on my brain box. So maybe just sort of go through my newsfeed on Facebook. A lot of my friends post funny stuff or thought-provoking stuff, but not in a way that I need to commit to necessarily. I can just kind of sit there and just de-stress and decompress a little bit. That's a comfort zone in the sense that I come home and I do that virtually every weekday. And I do it for about an hour, and it's just my little way of allowing my brain to just, let peace overcome it slightly after the stress of the day and kind of just come back to myself. And I probably won't talk a lot during that time. I probably won't interact with my boyfriend much, which he's fine with because he knows that's kind of like my little happy hour of not talking and just silencing my brain a little bit. And I think that stepping out of your comfort zone sometimes involves recognising when you have a little bit of a routine going on that you don't think about anymore, that you do on autopilot in a sense, and that you could do with really challenging by just not even overthinking it, just doing something a little bit different. So instead of me coming in and immediately doing what I always do and sitting down in front of the laptop, I could perhaps instead, go for a shower to invigorate myself and then read a book instead. Or I could decide that I'm not going to get out of my clothes yet. I'm going to keep my coat on and go for a little walk around the block, maybe with my boyfriend, get some fresh air, kind of de-stress myself that way. It doesn't always have to be the same routine. It doesn't have to get old, and it doesn't have to become something that you do without thinking, because doing things over and over again for a long time without thinking it kind of becomes very robotic. I mean, it is the behaviour of a robot. And I think when you actually step out of yourself and watch yourself doing something very animatronic and very kind of thoughtlessly, because it's what you've always done and it's what you feel comfortable with, then you can recognise that it is a routine comfort zone in the physical realm. So it's not even something you attach a lot of emotion to, really, but you would feel somehow uncomfortable or somehow at risk kind of without it, because it's what you do, it's how you de-stress, it's how you come back to yourself. But why should it always be that thing? Why should you always do that thing? And I think that when this pertains to spirituality, it's definitely true. And with my kind of magic video, which I know I've referred to a couple of times, but it's just so perfect for my thoughts that I'm having on spirituality. In the My Kind of Magic video, I talked about how for a long time I didn't feel able to challenge the accepted standard of Western magic and what contemporary witchcraft is and how it's done and what the routine is and how the four elements are involved in the circle and the certain things that ought to be on the altar and so on. And I'm not saying that my ideas were that you either had to be Wiccan or nothing, but I'm talking about even in books that kind of pertain to witchcraft on a broader and more generalised level, I still felt like there were very strict rules, and I felt like there were certain things that it was accepted that we would want in our altar or we would need in our sacred space, or this is how you cleanse, or this is what you need to invoke such and such an energy. And it took me a very long time to think outside of that box and allow myself to, guilt-free, and to think, you know what, I'm going to define this in my own way and I'm going to go my own way about it. So I think sometimes that's a difficulty with accepting the generalised standard that you feel you've had to adhere to for so long, and suddenly you watch yourself doing it and you think, I'm not emotionally attached to this in any way. I'm just not. I need to go and do my own thing and create something in my own way. And I'm not sure that it's even got anything to do particularly with a tradition, but I've had my grounding in tradition, I've done my reading, and now I need to accept that some things need to be altered and customised to suit me. So I don't think that's anything that that needs to be villainised at all. I think it's just challenging the routine, it's challenging what you've learned, it's challenging what you've been told is acceptable, and it's kind of coming into your own a little bit. And I think you don't just need to do that with your ritual practice, even if you don't perform ritual practice, but you think of yourself as a spiritual person. Have a look at the routines that you've been going along with for a very long time. Have a look at the way that it may have become too comfortable, or it may have become something that you do on autopilot. And if that's the case, then shake it up a little bit, change out of it, and see how that makes you feel. Because I think that if you're doing something that's supposed to make you feel alive and in touch and awake and part of it, but you're actually doing it in a way that completely evades those feelings and also kind of makes you feel a little bit maybe numb from the ordinary mundanity of doing it so many times and not considering changing it or considering challenging yourself, then that's kind of a contradiction in terms. You're doing something as a spiritual act, but doing something as a spiritual act is supposed to really invigorate you, it's supposed to wake you up, it's supposed to almost be kind of like a very pleasant, ecstatic slap in the face kind of thing. And if you haven't felt that for a long time from what you do in practice, then it's time to change up practice. So I think that's kind of one thing that I thought. And with regard to the last video that I made, and I think it could stand to be mentioned again here as well, that challenging labels is very important. Not in a way that's going to completely unbalance you or upset you or make you feel like you need to go away and start your spiritual life all over again and it's all kind of very discombobulating for you. But I think, a few people in the last few months have talked about the idea of intellectual materialism, about the idea that you associate yourself and equate yourself with this label. You learn everything you need to learn about this label and feel so comfortable with it, but then you kind of pop it on the shelf. It's something you own, it's a possession. This is my label and these are my labels. And You know, do we ever really take those jars down and twist the lids and have a little smell of what's inside and a feel of what's inside and think, is this really me anymore? Do I really possess this label anymore? Or am I kind of coming into something else? And it's not about me saying that words are especially important or should be important for you, and it's not about me saying that the label is the be all and end all. It's about me saying that if the label is accepted, and it's accepted no matter what, and it's never questioned, it's never re-explored, it's never reassessed, then how important can it really be to you? You know, if you don't check in with yourself and have that inner dialogue to establish if the label is still where you are and still who you are, then in a way the label has just simply become a possession that's gone dusty on the shelf. And I think that there's always that danger with labels. Like I said in the last video, labels are such a double-edged sword, and I probably might even talk more about this at another point, because I really believe it's so true. There's such a risk, but there's also such a beauty to labels in spirituality. So yeah, I think challenging the label. And another thing that I was thinking about recently, and that I may start doing a little blog series about, is the power of limiting thoughts. Those kinds of thoughts that you allow into your routine, or you allow to harm you or to keep you in a negative cycle without even really thinking about it, because limiting thoughts in a sense are beliefs, and we're kind of accepting of our beliefs. We kind of don't really feel we can change them or shift them through force of will. We feel that maybe they'll change over time, or that some beliefs that we hold are just simply unfortunate, and yes, they do hold us back, but there's nothing we can do about it. When in reality, limiting thought should be challenged constantly. And what I mean by a limiting thought is a thought such as, I'm the kind of person who, whatever, or life is always, whatever, or I cannot, dot, dot, dot. These are limiting thoughts because they're absolutely, they're definitive. They are, you can't really question them, you can't argue with them. They sum up something in such a way that it's almost not allowing you to argue back, it's not allowing you to be objective. I mean, the worst one is, I'm the kind of person who, I'm the kind of person who does this, I'm not the kind of person who would do that. You know, that doesn't really fit in with who I am. That can often be a limiting thought. It's very powerful to know yourself and to understand your core being, and of course that's an important thing in spirituality, but make sure that it doesn't roll over into this limiting thought whereby you've got yourself in such a sphere that you can't break out. You know, you can't punch a hole through the atmosphere. You've made yourself that thing. It's almost like you've gotten a mannequin and you've dressed it up, you've put all the accessories on it, you've stuck labels all over it, and you're looking at it and thinking, well, that's me, that sums me up, that defines me. You know, that's very dangerous, because you're going to stay there. And that other limiting thought, life is always this, life works out like that, life works on this basis. You know, observing the complexities of life most closely, you're going to realise that there aren't a lot of hard and fast rules. I mean, the universal laws are the underpinning, but a lot of the limiting beliefs we have about the way life works are negative, you know, and it's because we've been beaten down, or we've been berated, or we berate ourselves, or, you know, we're still dealing with certain disappointments that we haven't really cleansed ourselves of or freed ourselves from. So I think that, you know, acceptance of the universal laws that's mostly a positive acceptance, like acceptance of the law of attraction. You can keep that because it's only going to serve you if you're doing it right, you know, or if you wake up every day and you genuinely believe that you're lucky and you're grateful for it. You can keep that belief because it's serving you. Limiting beliefs are beliefs that aren't serving you and are keeping you where you are, even though you want to move forward. And Teal Scott was talking recently about the importance of learning the difference between resistance and allowance. She talked about it ages ago in her video about source energy and about shadow work, but she also talked about it very recently about resistance and allowance. And it's so simple the way she puts it, because I've been confused about that concept myself really for quite a long time. I've often kind of not been able to think of a fitting example that makes it less abstract and more tangible to me. And she was saying that, you know, it's like imagining a big fight between the police officers and the protesters against war, for example, or warring factions of protesters, and they're pushing against each other, they're arguing with each other, they're throwing things at each other. They are resisting instead of allowing what they want to come into their lives by campaigning for peace, by building schools, by helping people, and by bringing love into the world to combat peace through allowance of what they combat war, through allowance of what they want. Instead, they are resisting the problem. They're pushing against people that are pro-war, or they're pushing against whoever they're objecting to. It's that push all the time, but instead they're aligning themselves with the problem by doing that. So they're not really solving anything. They feel they are because they're resisting with all their might. But what they really should do is move away from the problem and go towards allowing the solution by doing something that aligns themselves with the solution and aligns themselves with positivity and love. And I think, that's very true in spirituality when it comes to limiting thoughts. Don't try to resist and resist all the time your limiting thought. Go towards allowing yourself to have positive thoughts and positive beliefs instead. Because often when we put so much of our energy and our sweat, blood and tears into resisting something all the time, we don't realise that that's just keeping us where we are. We're not going anywhere. We're not going away towards the solution. We're just constantly pushing against the problem, and that's just wasting our energy, kind of thing, so to speak. I wasn't really planning on mentioning resistance and allowance, but it seemed to fit in pretty perfectly with what I wanted to say today. And the last thing that I would say about kind of reflecting and exploring when it comes to your spiritual path, and kind of risking stepping outside the box in terms of your daily routine and in terms of what you have felt for a very long time is aligned with you and your core being and who you are, but in fact may actually kind of be tired and old and maybe in need of a bit of a revamp, is understanding how to make friends with your intuition and how to listen to your intuition. And I think often when we talk about intuition, people feel it's still a very abstract concept. Even I feel it's a very abstract concept, even people who've been witches for like 15 years and of course, work solely on their intuition and always on their intuition, constantly checking in with it and manifesting their energy through using it and through having the bravery of the witch's heart, as they say. Even people like that who've long been in touch with the idea of intuition still find it a little bit hard to grasp because there are so many conflicting influences and so many people that you're taking advice from, so many different pathways that you could choose, and so many people or energies that you want to appease or align yourself with. Sometimes it can be very difficult to stop and just be still and listen to the true voice, the inner voice. And I think meditation can be really, really helpful for this. And I think also things like brainstorming, doing spider diagrams, asking yourself quick fire questions and then giving yourself the first answer that comes into your mind. So imagining that you're doing kind of like a very quick interview where a psychoanalyst asks you, what's the first thing that comes into your mind when I say this? Or quickly answer this question now without thinking. Imagine that you're being asked to do one of those exercises and see what comes up for you, because sometimes your inner voice struggles to get out because you analyse and you overthink, and sometimes you just need to stop your own brain. It's not so much about pulling yourself away from the outside influences and saying, right, I'm not going to listen to mum, I'm not going to listen to boyfriend, I have to listen to me, I have to do what's true for me. Sometimes you have to stop listening to that left side of the brain as well. You have to stop listening to that analytical, that rational side, that side which is sometimes aligned more with ego and sometimes aligned more with the perception of others or of how you want to be perceived by others. You need to go with that right brain. You need to start kind of brainstorming and branching out and maybe doing something very organically like singing or dancing or just kind of just shaking the negative energy off. Just shake that static off for a little while. Just try automatic writing, see what comes out. If you align yourself with those organic artistic activities, suddenly intuition is going to start rising to the surface because you are stopping that rigid analytical side for a moment. And of course that organisational side that works on determined factors and that works on your own safety and protection and what's logical and sensible, that side of the brain is not to be devalued. It's very important, but sometimes that right side, that colourful, that imaginative side, that side that goes moment to moment, very spontaneous, that side, if you give it free rein for a couple of hours, you will be more in touch with your intuition because it will bubble to the surface because it knows it's got its way out. You're opening the imaginative pores and intuition finds its way out in that way. So, don't be afraid to do that, and don't be afraid to brainstorm, and don't be afraid to kind of quickfire interview yourself and see what comes to the surface, because sometimes intuition just needs a little shake for it to get to the top of the bottle. And when it does, you will know, for example, when you feel that you are right in your choice, no matter what the people around you say. When it just feels right. when somebody's directing you in a certain way for your own good, and you just know without any fear in your heart that you can say, you know what, this is my choice, I'm going to own it, I feel inside that it's going to be right. And I'm going to do some blog posts about intuition as well, because I do think it's such an abstract concept, really, the idea of getting in touch with it, and the idea of trusting our inner voice, and trusting that we have an inner voice as well, because as I said, so many different voices and so many different opinions grapple for position. And, you know, we are not just trying to live one life as one person. We are very multifaceted beings, you know. We do need to give the archetypes deep down inside of us a voice. And some archetypes are very strong for some people. I think the warrior archetype is very strong in me. And I think the archetype of the sage is probably quite strong in me. But I think I also need to give certain other archetypes a bit of time in the driver's seat. You know, like I think that, just thinking about tarot, for example, that the certain archetypes that are represented by the kings and queens, kind of like the responsible mother and father kind of figures, you know, landowners, independents, people that that rule over realms and that have homesteads that they organise, and you know, just I think that those kinds of archetypes are the types that are deep down in me that I don't allow to shake to the surface sometimes. I think we align ourselves with the archetypes that we feel most represent us, but there are other ones down there that want to do our work as well, and it's about finding that balance. It's about not being so one-sided in spirituality or in other areas of self-development. So I'm going to stop rambling now, and I think I covered sort of a little bit. I wanted to kind of jump on from what I said last time, and I really wanted to cover limiting thoughts, because I think that's something that's coming up as well for a lot of my tarot querents at the moment, and that really interests me that it's coming up a lot. And I think that asking people to examine their limiting thoughts by kind of just giving them some simple examples of what limiting thoughts are can be quite illuminating. And lately I've been examining my own, particularly with regard to work and the situation where I'm working at the moment, and it has really helped, and it has allowed me to align myself more with my positivity. And I think, you know, that's always moving toward the solution by allowing. You know, it's not pushing against the problem by resisting. You know, giving yourself that chance to connect with your positivity always makes things happen in the way you want, even if it's really, really difficult at first. Even if you want to express and embrace your negativity because you're so incensed or you feel so devalued, you know, you don't want to be positive. You almost feel like it's a betrayal of what you really feel. But deep down, you know that if you align yourself with your positivity, and you do through allowing rather than resisting, you're going to have a better day. That is just a fact. You are going to have a better day. You may need to slip it on reluctantly at first, but soon it's just going to start hugging you close, and you know you're just going to have a great day. You're going to have the kind of day you wanted to have. Okay, so that's all for now, and tea and tarot will be on the way at one point or another. I think the next episode is going to be about money and messages that tarot has about finances and stuff like that, because I think even though some people find it a bit of a mundane topic, and I certainly used to, I never used to really like that much when querents came to me with questions about money, because I always kind of thought it was beneath the transcendental nature of tarot. But no, money is real, it's there, we all have to deal with it, we all have feelings and opinions about it, and we all have problems relating to it, whether we have it or not. So it's a perfectly suitable subject for tarot, and I'm going to get right into that, and hopefully you guys will all enjoy it and give me your input, and bye for now, guys.